Oh boy, I'm excited for this one. Chances are you've heard of JoJo's Bizzare Adventure, whether from memes or from the references. At this current recording time, Part 7 has not been announced for an anime adaptation yet, so now is the perfect time to read the manga. I will die on this hill saying Part 7 is the best section of JoJo's Bizzare Adventure, and I would highly recommend it to any fan of compelling stories, regardless of your feelings towards the series. I'm well aware this is a huge claim, but I'm making it for a good reason. This video will attempt to articulate what might make this manga your new obsession. For those new, my name here on YouTube is Pollymacho, thanks for stopping by, and I'm honored to have your attention as I tell you this epic of the Steel Ball Run race of 1890. History favors the bold, and the bold are overflowing in the Steel Ball Run race. A cross-country race starting from San Diego and ending in New York City. The race will take place over 80 to 90 days, with the winner being cemented into the history books and the cash prize of, converted to our modern-day equivalent, $50 million. Racers from worldwide have accepted this call and flocked to Pacific Beach. Some faces are pretty familiar for those following the series, while others are not. Enter our main character, Gyro Zappelli, cocky and stylish, an Italian from a line of duty-bound executioners, participating in the race to save the life of an innocent, falsely sentenced to die. Before the race can begin, Gyro catches the attention of another soul, that being this story's Joestar, Johnny, an ex-jockey whose arrogance led to the loss of his legs. But in a chance encounter, Gyro's weapons, a pair of steel balls, utilizing a technique called the spin, result in Johnny gaining the use of his legs for a second. But it's enough for Johnny to beg Gyro to teach him. With some begrudging reluctance, Gyro eventually comes to agree to this, and the two set out for the race. The two will come across the mummified corpse parts of a long-forgotten saint, leading to them fending off other racers and assassins sent by the President of the United States. Yeah, Steel Ball Run is pretty sick. There's a debate on the internet about JoJo's, whether starting from the beginning of Part 1 or jumping to whatever sounds cool. While I myself started from Part 1, at the risk of being stoned on the virtual square that is this website, I would actually suggest starting with Part 7. And the unique strength in the series that makes this possible is how each part is a fresh start, following a new JoJo and a new set of characters. Some characters from other sections do make appearances, but still, it's not required to know all of this history to enjoy the stories. I say Part 7 because it's a really cool way of displaying how far Araki has come in creating this series. It started with a similar concept to Fist of the North Star with its main character and how it handled its fights, then transformed into something entirely of its own with an infectious sense of energy and flair. Because each part is doing its own thing, I recommend Part 7 because I want you to see the best of what this series can be. Then, if you enjoy this part, you can move on to whatever section you want from there. One of the coolest aspects of this part is the characters of this story, specifically the participants of the Steel Ball Run race. Though we follow Gyro and Johnny, the other racers have an established place in this world and feel like a constant presence in this story. One of my favorite small-scale examples is Poco Loco, a carefree and optimistic person who enters the race in hopes of buying a farm for his grandfather. Compared to most of the other important characters, Poco Loco is just a dude who wants to win the race. We see him usually ranking high in each stage due to his writing and his secret ability. Poco Loco has a stand called Heya. Stands are a concept we'll cover later when talking about the fights. This little monkey-looking guy cheers Poco Loco on and gives him advice on what he should do, which always pays off with him getting an advantage, which is cool because it makes you want to know how it's going to turn out for him. Other racers are pretty sick too, such as Sandman, a Native American who hopes to win the race to buy land for his people and protect his sister, choosing like an absolute lad to run the entire race on his bare feet. There's also this really awesome character named Mountain Tim, who could totally be the main character in a different Western story based on his design and demeanor. He also has this hilarious detail where horses will bow their heads in respect when he shows up. It's awesome. There are other dope characters that I want to mention, but I would be giving away more of the story than I would like, so I'm gonna leave it there for the other racers. But it's cool because through each stage, you keep seeing these familiar faces that bump into our duo. Similar to what I mentioned in my Bloodborne video, it creates this feeling of comfort, as these travelers just so happen to bump into each other on their journeys, and it's only a matter of time before they go their separate ways. But some of the most interesting characters are what I like to call the redo characters. For reasons I don't want to spoil, Part 7 acts as a do-over, a way to wipe the slate clean of established characters and narrative baggage, and if I were to say which part it was seeking to reimagine, that would be Part 1. The first part of JoJo's Bizzare Adventure focuses on the first JoJo that started the series in 1880, none other than Jonathan Joestar, an upstanding gentleman, strong and kind, looking to protect his family and the English countryside from his foster brother Dio Brando. With the help of a mentor figure, Baron Zappelli, Jonathan learns about Haman, or one of my favorite ways I've heard it described, magical sunshine karate to defeat vampires. It's a charming part, and I definitely do have fond memories of it, but what I love so much about Part 7 is how it takes some of those familiar concepts from Part 1 and refines them into something more exciting and complex. Setting-wise, we're moving away from England and traveling to the United States of America, where the cowboy was beginning to die out. A sense of exploration and discovery was being paved over with civilization. There's this undertone of the race that isn't directly stated, but it's felt. That being how this race feels like the last hurrah for the frontier before it slowly dies away. In fact, the race is even structured like that. It starts in San Diego and features deserts and wide open landscapes, culminating in the hustle and bustle of New York City, a state of progress and modern stability. The United States adds to the themes of Steel Ball Run and the joy of discovery. The race is a vehicle for our duo to travel and see interesting sights, acting as a moment in time they can always take with them no matter what happens. And on that point, I want to talk about this story's JoJo, Johnny Joestar. Johnny Joestar is the polar opposite compared to his counterpart Jonathan. While Jonathan was an Adonis of masculinity and kindness for his fellow man, Johnny is a bitter and selfish person. Johnny is the doomer to Jonathan's bloomer, but considering what he had to go through, I can understand how he became that way. Johnny was a boy who was starved of love from his father and lost his role model of an older sibling at a young age. He always lived in that shadow no matter how hard he tried, his father even saying after an altercation that God had taken the wrong son from him. So Johnny became the greatest racer he could be, making famous friends and even experiences an average person couldn't even dream of. But what caused Johnny to lose the loss of his legs and his status wasn't the person who shot him. That was all Johnny. The boy shot Johnny because he had been punished for doing nothing wrong. Johnny used his power to skip this child who had waited hours in line for a movie. He didn't even want to see it, he just wanted to get laid. He used his status to hurt someone, not even with guided malice, just because he could. And with that injury, he was cast off by his friends and everyone who wanted something from him. To the world, he was once great until he wasn't, and they pointed their attention to someone else, leaving him all alone. In Part 1, everyone loved Jonathan. Even Dio had a tremendous amount of respect for him in the end. But in here, no one really gives a shit about Johnny. Even Johnny hates himself. That is, until he meets Gyro Zappelli. Baron Zappelli was an important mentor figure to Jonathan in Part 1, but he also screamed side character. He was in the story to help Jonathan reach his potential with Haman. Gyro acts as a mentor as well, but also a person with his own agency. He has other goals, and the reason he travels with Johnny is that he's interested in the person Johnny can become. He's not perfect, far from it. He's quick to anger and he doesn't think things through. But he's also a friend to Johnny. He'll crack jokes and sing songs, asking for his thoughts. He's goofy, and most importantly, he believes in this Joestar in a society that has shunned him. When we first meet Johnny, he's such a small presence. His intro is so minor compared to Gyro's. And it's because of Gyro and his confidence that Johnny can become great. I will always hold a special place in my heart for Jonathan, but I resonate with Johnny more. Jonathan was born great. Johnny stands taller because he had to fight tooth and nail to get there. For our last comparison with a Part 1 counterpart, let's take a look at the diabolical and absolute scoundrel Dio Brando, who in Part 7 is now titled Diego Brando. Diego is the most similar of the three characters compared to the alternate takes of Part 1. Dio in Phantom Blood was all about serving his own needs and creating a world in his image, a monster bent on ravaging the world for his own enjoyment. In Part 7, Diego is all about creating a future for himself too, yet he's not as evil as Dio. He's an expert jockey that comes into contact with Johnny and Gyro a few times, but I never got the feeling he fought them out of hatred or any personal grudge, rather just having opposing goals and clashing because of it. Even his backstory in Part 7 is more explicit than in Part 1, and you feel bad for the guy. He's been dealt a cruel hand, and you may just root for him to fix his situation.
Dio
in Part 1 was a master manipulator, emotionally tormenting Jonathan and leading to the death of his father for his own ends. But Diego gets controlled by a side antagonist and leads to a conflict where he turns into a dinosaur and attacks our protagonists. The ability is called Scary Monster, and it's freaking awesome. And on that point, it's time to dig into the fights. The best word to describe fights in Steel Ball Run would be technical. From Part 3 onwards, combat encounters shifted from physical combat to more psychological and puzzle-based encounters. Most characters have a stand. Think of it as a unique manifestation of someone's power. It's usually represented as a spectral ghost or humanoid-looking character, though it varies depending on the person. Each stand has its own strengths and weaknesses. For the most part, there is no objective best stand. Each has unique abilities that play into the user's strengths. And the fights in this part are so cool. The villains and their powers are so dope. It's like peak JoJo, man. For example, there's this really sick encounter with a character named Ringo Road again. His stand is called Mandem, an ability that allows him to rewind time back for 6 seconds. That sounds pretty limiting until you realize that as long as he can reach his watch, even if he gets shot in a fatal area, he can erase that action and remember what you did and how it resulted. And what adds to how sick fights are is how action-packed they get. They act like puzzles, but incorrect solutions or power reversals result in really impactful and deadly wounds. And I think the best fights are the oddly specific ones, an enemy having the perfect conditions to unleash their abilities to a horrifying effect. Such as one of my favorite fights where Johnny and Gyro come into contact with an assassin named Blackmore in a rainstorm, with a stand that can manipulate rain. It allows Blackmore to do stuff like walking on raindrops, but it gets even crazier, allowing rain to carry and project body parts that he can separate to avoid bullets and cover large distances. Of course, if there's no rain, the stand is practically useless, but if so, he is the master of his domain. And a fun detail is how most stands and their users are named after songs or artists and bands, giving the series an additional point of flair that makes it stand out. If you're looking to make your reading experience even more surreal, I would totally recommend listening to the songs referenced in each encounter. Sometimes they line up really well, like with Catch the Rainbow or Civil War, and it becomes this musical combat encounter that's one of a kind, really leaning into the bizarre aspect of the series. You can expect the fights to capture your attention as you view each panel and wondering how it'll finish. And what I love about this part is while we're following Gyro and Johnny, we get to see combat from side characters and other assassins, leading to a feeling of suspense that you don't know who's gonna live and who's gonna bite the dust. So we're at the point in this format where I talk about stuff that I think could be deal breakers when getting into the story. This is a purely subjective concept, much like the framing of this video, but it's ultimately your call if this is something you can dig. So there's this thing in the JoJo community that acts as a lighthearted meme, but it does underline a problem with the series sometimes. That being the phrase, Araki forgot. It's a term used when an established thing in JoJo is forgotten in the story, leading to the viewer going, wait, what about blank? It's similar to the concept of a plot hole, but it's not as large in scale, but it's like getting a chip of a plate stuck in your throat in the delicious spaghetti that is Steel Ball Run. One example of this, and I know it's going to sound very silly, is the appearance of President Funny Valentine. In the story's first half, he's depicted as a more stout fellow. Partway through, he's shown as a totally jacked unit and seems to have a different personality. My guess is that once Araki knew he wanted Funny Valentine to be the final enemy, he changed the appearance to reflect that, making him more menacing. It's not a big deal, but it does highlight some details that, if you look him over close enough, can make you unsure about the overall cohesion of the work that ran for 7 years. Another point to mention is that this part, much like the series itself, features characters explaining their abilities mid-combat, which can slow the pacing of a battle. When reading it in the manga, it's not really a problem, primarily because the speed of which is dictated entirely by the rate of your processing words and scrolling to the next page. But I do want to give a heads up if you decide to watch the anime for it instead when it comes out. Those are all the points I think for deal breakers. Nothing is ever perfect, but I think this should be some good points to consider if you want to get into this. And with that, I want to go over 2 moments that really make me love this part of JoJo's so much. To do that, I will be sharing sections that could be considered spoilers, the aftermath of a particular fight in chapter 48, and a speech from Funny Valentine much later on. If you want to skip this and read the manga, feel free to do so and have a great time. But if not, good to have you on board. Let's rock. Okay, so let's go over one of Funny Valentine's best moments, the fantastic napkin speech. At this current point in the story, we've seen more of this character than the looming threat he has been for most of the story. In this moment, we begin to take Valentine seriously, where he becomes established in a way that clicks with you, and he does this all with his simple speech about a napkin. If you haven't read this part, you probably think what I'm saying is ridiculous, and it totally is, but just listen for yourself. I'm gonna read it to you and let you be the judge. Suppose you were sitting down at this table, the napkins are in front of you. Which napkin would you take? The one on your left or the one on your right? The one on your left side or the one on your right side? Usually, you would take the one on your left side. That is correct, too, but in a larger sense on society, that is wrong. Perhaps I could even substitute society with the universe. The correct answer is that it is determined by the one who takes his or her napkin first, yes? If the first one takes the napkin to the right, there is no choice but for the others to take the right napkin. The same goes for the left. Everyone else will take the napkin to their left because they have no other option. This is society. Who are the ones that determine the price of land first? They must have been someone who determined the value of money first, the size of the rails on the train track, the magnitude of electricity, laws, and regulations. Who are the first to determine these things? Do we all do it because this is a republic, or is it arbitrary? No. The one who took the napkin first determined all of these things. The rules of this world are determined by the same principle of right or left. In a society like this table, a state of equilibrium, one must make the first move, everyone must follow. In every era, the world has been operating by the napkin principle, and the one who takes the napkin first must be someone who is respected by all. It's not that anyone can fulfill this role. Those that are despotic or unworthy will be scorned, and those are the losers. In the case of this table, the eldest or the master of the party will take the napkin first, because everybody respects these individuals. Damn, that's a great speech right there. It's not just a goofy analogy, but rather a declaration of a goal and Funny Valentine articulating his ambition. He is a deeply patriotic character who wants the USA to be #1 and wants to be the master of the party. By taking the napkin or the saint's corpse, it's his way of cementing his place in history, of making everyone else fall in line with their reaction to it. It's a damn good scene, and it gives you enough information to explain why he does what he does, and makes him way more interesting than he first appears. And the second moment I want to go over really captured what Steel Ball Run is to me, and why I think you should try it. And that is partway through chapter 48, Tubular Bells, Part 1. Events push our duo, Gyro and Johnny, to their limits. They have 2 different stand encounters to contend with, one acting as a sort of trial, the other a direct battle with 11 bounty hunters who can traverse through each other's backs. It's awesome. And our characters are so close to victory. And at the last moment, disaster strikes. One of the stands leads Gyro to become a part of it through the rules of its ability, and it's beginning to look like we might say goodbye to our pizza-singing friend. But Johnny makes a difficult choice. At this point in the story, Johnny doesn't care about the race anymore. Instead, he's now interested in the corpse parts and would do anything to obtain them. And that makes it so much worse when Gyro is freed from the stand. The first thing he sees is Johnny with tears falling down his cheeks as he gives the corpse parts to the last remaining bounty hunter, completing the stand's conditions, thus saving Gyro at the cost of Johnny's dream. But at this moment of despair, this little moment happens. You want a drink, Gyro? We have to get rid of this wine too. Yeah, maybe it'll warm us up a little, huh? Yeah, the sun's just about to set. Hey, how about we make a toast before we get on our horses? To what? We lost everything. How about a toast to the ball that hit the net? What do you mean? Don't like it? Then to the next corpse part. The next part, huh? I like it. To the next part. And the goal. To the next part. And the goal. And the two of them sit there in the snow-piled streets of Milwaukee and drink a bottle of wine in the hopes of better things together. It's a beautiful moment because at the end of the day, while it is a race across a continent and they're fighting the President of the United States, it's still a story about the journey. The point in these characters' lives where they traversed a country together. And about a year ago, I was reminded of this when I came across this beautiful video done by Rawa's FHK on Steel Ball Run, with Chase Eagleson doing a cover of Time in a Bottle, and I just teared up when I saw it. This 3-minute and 11-second video featured a pan of characters we encountered in this journey. It starts with that exact scene I mentioned with the wine, and it just really hits harder than any Steel Ball could. That being the passage of time and to cherish every moment you can, because eventually it will end. Even Steel Ball Run ends. You only have 95 chapters to cherish this story, and you'll never experience it the first time again. So saddle up and enjoy the absolute shit out of it. You are in for a magical time, my friend. My name here on YouTube is Pollymacho, and there will be a day when I make my last video on this channel. But today is not that day. Far from it. So let's raise a toast to Hirohiko Araki's masterpiece, JoJo's Bizzare Adventure Part 7, Steel Ball Run. Thank you for watching, and if you're new here, that would actually be really funny considering I was talking about endings. I would be honored if you subscribe to stay up to date for Macho Recommendations, and feel free to comment letting me know what you think about the series, about this video, whatever it may be. Thanks a whole bunch, partner. Have a good one.